Hey everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Fullback Dive, brought to you by the good people at the Roto Street Journal, acting as your lead blocker to fantasy glory, paving your way to fantasy excellence, making all your football-related fantasies come true. I'm your host, Nat the Truth Jones. With me, as always, the Wolf of Roto Street himself, fresh off a banger of a weekend that can't be discussed. So don't even ask.
That
Anyway,
bachelor party life, baby. It was a great one. Great group of guys. We're down in Providence, Rhode Island, so many of you might know what that means in general. It was a great time, though. We had a really, really fun weekend. Just good family, good friends, 2 days together. I felt like I was going to die yesterday by the end of it all. But here we are. I woke up today feeling a new man, ready to dive into some 2023 fantasy football projections, baby. But yeah, it was a real great weekend.
Timely, because we're going to continue with our division by division projections. I was with the Wolf for the AFC East. For the AFC North, he did the AFC South solo. By the way, I just posted the AFC North podcast. If you want to listen in the car or something, if you're not able to watch the live stream, that's up in its entirety. I'll be posting the South tomorrow, and I'll probably be posting the AFC West, the day after. AFC West, pretty interesting. This was the division everyone was psyched about last year. What's your sense? Are people as psyched about the AFC West this year as they were last year?
I think it's certainly a little bit less excitement because coming into last year, you had Davante Adams just arrived and Russell Wilson just arrived, and nobody knew he sucked at this point. So there's definitely the buzz of all these new arrivals to then challenge Pat Mahomes the next year, and the step of Justin Herbert's progression was supposed to be another big banger of a year. And I think almost everybody but the Chiefs tended to kind of have a letdown for what the expectations for what this division were. The Chargers still had a pretty good overall team, made the playoffs, made a solid effort there. But as in terms of their offensive output, I think they underwhelmed what a lot of people thought they were going to do. But there's a lot of reason for optimism this year with new coaches, not new players arriving necessarily, but Kellen Moore coming into the Chargers, Sean Payton going to the Broncos, giving us a little bit new energy, new life that might actually be bigger than what happened last year, if you can believe it or not. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one too. We're going to be making our predictions at the end of the show as far as what order we think they're going to finish in. I did not get to weigh in on the AFC South. Can you tell me real quick what your projection was for the 1 through 4 in the AFC South?
Yeah. We ripped through those quick. I actually don't even know if I did that at the end of the show where I'd have them ranked. So it's good to follow up. I figured of all the ones to miss.
Let's do it now.
That'd be the one to I figured if I could, you had to be out for one. I was like, hey, you'd probably rather miss the AFC South because that was just actually kind of intriguing with some rookies arriving there at QBs. But definitely go catch that or any of the other divisions if you've missed it up. This is the last of the AFC shows, and we'll be hitting the NFC the rest of the week. I would say definitely the Jags at the top, just like last year. I think the Titans are taking yet another step back. I just don't believe they've done nearly enough to contend with the Jags at this point. And then it just comes down to, I'd probably still have the Titans second in the division. So if we have the Jags going, 11 wins, 6 losses, I think the Titans might finish in second, but still be under 500, like 7-9, or it'd be rather 7-10, 17 game season. I think about 7 wins sounds right. They're still a tough team. Vrabel, I still believe in, but ultimately, I just don't think they have the firepower to keep up with the Jags. The rest of the division's trash. I think Houston's going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I believe in Stroud. I have Stroud having a pretty good year, but that defense is still a mess. They still don't have a ton of firepower around CJ Stroud. So even though I do believe he's the future, I think it's going to be some growing pains between him and I think the Colts have a little bit more stability there. Anthony Richardson a bit more of a wild card at rookie QB, but I feel like the Colts just as an organization seem to have a little more just with it. And I really like that rookie head coach coming in there over from the Eagles, Shane Steichen. He's a great offensive mind, did great things for Justin Herbert and then for Jalen Hurts in back-to-back years. So to me, if one team's going to hit the ground running a little faster with their rookie QB, I think it's probably the Colts, even with a more raw guy. So I'll have the Colts in third, maybe 6 wins at most, and then the Texans, potentially the worst team in the NFL, even if CJ Stroud does well. I'd say 2 to 3 wins tops for them. What about you?
This is boring because I completely 100% agree with every single thing you just said. Jags, Titans, maybe slightly below 500. And then the Colts and the Texans, I think, are both going to be terrible. But if gun to my head, I would probably pick the Colts to be a slightly better bad team. So, yeah, we feel exactly the same way. Glad we got that out of the way. You ready to dive into the AFC West?
Let's dive in. I'll pull up the projections now.
No better team to start with, of course, than the good old Kansas City Chiefs, defending champions. Ever heard of them? Here we go. Kansas City Chiefs. You have already gone on record as saying that you think they're going to stink and that the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl.
Now, that is not me saying the Chiefs are going to stink. I think the Chiefs
I don't remember
if
that was a direct quote or not, but that's how I remember it.
I did predict that I think the Bengals will go all the way and finally get it done with Joe Burrow there, Joe Cool. But that's not because I think the Chiefs are going to stink. Rather, I think they're going to have another beautiful duel in the AFC Championship game with Burrow just slightly edging out Pat Mahomes this year. Okay. But in terms of the regular season, I think this is yet another dominant year for this Chiefs, this Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes regime. What else is there to expect but dominance at this point? That's all they have done. So starting as we always do, we like to look at the team level and just how many raw plays we expect this team to be running, and then we can decide how many is that pass, how many run, and then what will the market shares, the slices of these pies end up being. But just at the team level, I wanted to quickly show you, since Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes have paired up, here we go. Here, it's pulling up right here. They have not attempted in the last 3 years fewer than 630 pass attempts. They have been at a 61% or higher pass rate in 5 straight seasons, all 5 with Pat Mahomes. That's a big difference from when he had Alex Smith. They were a really balanced team there, but they have leaned into the cannon arm of Mahomes, and why wouldn't you? As you can see, too, mostly above league average, certainly for 3 straight, more plays than typical run by the league average. Mahomes' first couple years, they actually did surprisingly play at a little bit of a slower pace. They just would bombs away. It was more so because the offense was just off the field so fast because they were scoring so fast. Not necessarily that they were playing at a slow pace or anything of that nature. So I do expect more of the same, another 680-ish pass attempts. I'll scroll back up here. They haven't been above 440 rushing attempts since Kareem Hunt left and after he led the league in rushing with Alex Smith. So I think another mediocre at best in terms of rushing pie, really big aerial pie, and it can't get any tastier than when it comes from Patrick Mahomes. I have him going for yet another banger of a season, as you can see. 5,390 yards, 39 touchdowns. Last year, he did actually throw the second most touchdowns of his career, which was crazy. You lose Tyreek Hill, you think he's going to take a step back, and he ends up throwing for the most yards of his career, the second most touchdowns, just having himself a monster season. As you can see, he really just has it's Pat Mahomes. I mean, you don't need me to sing his praises too much. But in terms of his 5 years of the league, quarterback 1, 6, 2, 4, and 1. Top 5 in points per game every year as the starter. So the QB6 year, he ended up missing a few games, and that just knocked him just out of the top 5. But he's always been top 5 in points per game. He's thrown 37 or more TDs in all but one. And again, that was when he got hurt, was the year he missed that. So no Tyreek, no problem. It's going to be yet another enormous and delicious aerial pie here in Kansas City. The debate then becomes, how does it get distributed here? Last year, obviously, Travis Kelce stepped up in the absence. He's always stepped up. He's always been a beast. In fact, he has had 25% or higher target share in all but 1 year with Pat Mahomes. He's never had fewer than 134 targets. So I can just scroll down and show you real quick. I expect him to yet again lead the way. And in fact, I have him going for a career high 164 targets, right around his career highs in receptions, 1,460 yards and 10 touchdowns. Just another absolute masterpiece from Travis Kelce. And why could he take it even a step further in this year? Well, they also lost both Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman, who were the two of their top 4 guys in target share last year, in target share per game. Both had injuries. So ultimately, McCole Hardman didn't log that many targets as a whole. But in the games he played, he was very active and did see a lot of work. Juju was second on the team with a 16% target share. So those have been vacated as well. 78 catches, almost 100 targets there, even though he missed a game as well. He got to 99 targets. So that's a lot opening up. And they also had the second most inside the 10 targets open up in the league. Jerick McKinnon did return, so that got shaved off just a little bit, but they're still top 5 and inside the 10 targets there. And it just becomes, okay, so who's going to fill that Juju Smith-Schuster role? I don't know that they drafted anybody that's all that similar there. So to me, it's just yet another huge season. Whether it's the 164, 150 where he typically is around, you're going to get a monster season from Travis Kelce. As we've talked about, you take him 1 overall, you'll get no argument from me. Such a huge edge over the field. He'll put up, I mean, these numbers I have him going for are top 5 receiver numbers, and you get it at the rarest position to find any type of production, never mind top 5 receiver. So big in on Kelce. You see any reason why not to be?
No. Absolutely not. I mean, it's just insane. I'm looking at this list of receivers, and granted, Kelsey is essentially a receiver and one of the best in the business. But the fact that we are both confidently like, yeah, Mahomes is going to throw for 5,000 yards and stuff. Look at these receivers. Look at these receivers. And
it's nuts,
and
man.
neither one of us is like, oh man, I don't know if he's got the weapons cabinet. We're both like, yeah, he'll be fine. There's
Exactly.
that's just, I mean, there's nobody better. I mean, it's nuts. I know that's not a hot take, but we're looking at Tony, MVS, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice, and we're like, yeah, he'll throw for 5,000 yards.
Right, exactly. I mean, starting X receiver Nat Jones in the slot, the Wolf, he'd still throw for 5K yards somehow.
I'll probably get like 600 yards on this team.
Yeah, exactly. Until he throws one fastball at us and it just breaks our face.
I mean, I get laid out. This is assuming I remained healthy, which I certainly would not.
Yeah, exactly. No chance of that. But yeah, that is the wild part.
I'm all in on Kelsey, and honestly, we said it a year ago, and we've talked about it kind of jokingly since then. I'm not sure this guy's not the number one overall pick.
Yeah, it's really wild. Just given the edge he can give you over the field, really, Kelsey does warrant that. I know last year I projected Mahomes to take a little step back, not because of any slight on him, just losing Tyreek Hill. I figured there's no way he can be he'll be good. I think I had him for like 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. It's just a slight step back, and he ends up throwing for the most yards of his career. So it's just insane. Somebody's going to be putting up stats here beyond Travis Kelce. It just becomes, is it consistent? Is it sustainable? Does it end up mattering? So to me, I projected out 15% of the targets behind Kelce going to Kadarius Toney. That's the next highest slice, the next biggest. So if he can stay healthy and log over 100 targets from Pat Mahomes, I really do think Kadarius Toney has some very untapped ceiling. You saw it there, like in the playoffs. He'd only touched the ball, I think, 6 total times. He scored 2 touchdowns. Just very explosive guy that all offseason, all the talk has been is how he's evolving into that true number one for this team, that they believe he can do it at the deep level of the field. That's an untapped part of his game. He certainly can. He has over one of the highest 99th percentile speed scores coming out. So the guy can get deep. Never going to compare him with Tyreek Hill speed, but he has that type of ability to take the top off the defense, but then also really, really eat underneath. And after the catch, he's so dangerous. That's where we've already seen him be such a beast at this NFL level on his limited amount of glimpses. So you're asking for a lot. We have never seen him fully stay together and keep it healthy, but he does bring that type of versatility. You saw him line up in the backfield. He could be that true alpha here. So going in round 7 right now, 932 through the air and 7 touchdowns in addition to maybe a couple scores on the ground. You know how much Andy Reid loves those little shovel passes and those cute little gimmicks. You can definitely see Toney, who, again, as I said, minimal snaps last year, but when he was in, he was scoring at will in this offense. So I really like Kadarius Toney. I think he's a great pick in that 7th round range where he's going right now. And after him, though, it does get a little sketchy. I don't ever trust MVS. Even in best ball, you'll have 2 to 3 spikes, and yeah, sure, he'll be in your lineup for those. But I do not. I've never been an MVS guy, still not an MVS guy. He only had one season above a 55% catch rate. Even with Mahomes last year, was still a 52% catch rate. So not a big fan of MVS. He serves his role. He stretches the defense, but he doesn't actually put up many points on his own. A lot of rumbling so far that Sky Moore is the early favorite to replace Juju as the main slot guy, and that he's really looked up to the role so far in camp. This is shorts and helmets, and you never know how he's actually going to look when the pads come back on. He didn't do much as a rookie, but that often happens with Andy Reid, as it takes these guys at least a season to really adjust, similar to Kadarius Toney. I think we can give Sky Moore a similar benefit of the doubt. We've just seen more from Kadarius Toney, more explosiveness and more praise coming out of camp as well. So I don't have more beating out Toney for the number one role, but I have him among the receivers, finishing as the second between him and Toney. Obviously, Kelsey being the number one there. And then Rashee Rice, an impressive rookie who's apparently used, great contested catch type of guy. So he's been using his big frame well in early camp and staying after with Mahomes and all the things you want to see for a rookie. But as I would just say with Sky Moore, it often takes at least a half a season, if not a full year, for these rookie receivers to show up in Andy Reid's offense. But the kid can block. He's definitely one of those guys that can be in, Justin Watson was often in there last year just to block and get deep. Rashee Rice can do that. He's just better than Justin Watson at this point. So definitely could see this intriguing rookie do some things down the second half of the year, but he's going a little too expensive in these early drafts for me. So even at 563.3, that's fine. I also should know I got Sky Moore, who did see a few backfield snaps last year. I got him getting 9 carries and doing pretty good with that as well. So a nice versatile role for some of these receivers. But to me, it's really obviously Kelsey, first round, top 5 overall. Go for him. And then Kadarius Toney. And then I really just haven't been landing a ton more, but Sky Moore in that 11, 12 range, I've been kind of going in on. So that wraps up the receivers. Did you have any questions on any of them, Truth, or should I move on into the backfield?
No, I mean, I don't really have any questions on any of them. I'm not really into any of them. I think I agree with you that Tony's going to be the top dog, but I'm not really too excited to own any of these guys, which is just crazy. When we're talking about someone throwing for 5,300 yards, and they're like, "Hey, you want any of his receivers?" And I'm like, "Nah, not really."
Nah, just his tight end. It is crazy. It's wild, and that's kind of the case last year because you think about it. Even Juju, second on the team receiving, really wasn't that great. It's certainly not his price tag really in fantasy last year. You can't. I don't get how Mahomes just does it. He just does it even without people being all that valuable in fantasy. The running backs, though, he does like to get them involved in the passing game. Andy Reid always has. And it's interesting because back in the day, Andy Reid's workhorses, this is why we were all in on CEH as a rookie. You'd go to Jamal Charles and Brian Westbrook, Kareem Hunt for so long. It used to be clear cut, absolute bell cow for Andy Reid. But if we pull up here the running back ones, you'll see since Mahomes took over, the highest rushing share we've seen a back get is 53% of the workload. Last year, 41% went to Isaiah Pacheco, and that's exactly where I have it falling in line this year. It might make a lot of people roll and throw up here, but I don't have CEH just disappearing. It's the 5th year, or the 4th year rather. They did not pick up the 5th year option for him. So last year of his contract, we often do see teams see what can we get out of this guy. I mean, look no further. I guess Josh Jacobs he clearly had shown a lot more than CEH through his career. I'm not trying to compare those two, but a lot of times when they're about to run out of their contract, teams do end up giving these backs a lot more work just to see what they can do. And this is the crazy stat, Truth, is at the beginning of last year through the first 4 weeks, CEH was the running back 4 in fantasy. He was outscoring Austin Eckler, outscoring Christian McCaffrey, and outscoring Derrick Henry, among others, among every other person other than 3 other backs in there.
I remember.
Even though he sucks, and it was it wasn't good usage. Everybody kept saying sell him, and as they should have been. We were agreeing too. We're like, this doesn't seem sustainable given he's at 35, 41, 45% of the snaps. How is he still doing this? And then ultimately, if he had sold there, after that, he didn't have another double-digit point game, but multiple 20-point days to start the year. So at the last round best ball pick, maybe I don't think it's going to impact Pacheco. As you guys can see, I definitely have Pacheco getting the team high share here, but Jerick McKinnon, who was the clear-cut number 2 last year after CEH got hurt and then kind of disappeared, I think I could see him taking a little bit of a hit here. Certainly, maybe they get Hilaire, who was supposed to be one of the best receiving prospects that at the position coming out for past 10 years. He can catch the ball, and early camp reports are wheel routes looking good underneath, looking more explosive than he has in past years. I know it's gross. You go again, why is he still talking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire? How can you not move on? But at this point, you're talking about the last round, pick 210 in your underdog drafts. And whether it's injury, whether it's the team just saying, let's give it one last hurrah and see what we have with Helaire for at least a few games or two, I could see him getting at least a couple 20-point spikes on the season. Have you tuned me out enough suspiciously just because I was talking about Helaire that much? Or what are your thoughts?
I didn't tune you out. I was listening. I'm not going on for CEH in the last round. No.
Yeah. I'm
not interested. I hear you. No, I don't want him.
Yeah, that's fine. Cordarrelle Patterson goes in the same range. I know you prefer him, and I certainly I alternate between those two. Yeah, I alternate between those two a lot. But to me, this does make Jerick McKinnon, score 9 touchdowns last year, most fantasy points per touch last year. It makes him a bigger risk, in my opinion. Whereas it makes Isaiah Pacheco a bit of a big risk. He's going right now. Pacheco goes with what'd you say? Sorry.
I don't like any of these guys And the more I say this, the dumber it sounds, because like we're talking about a team that we just acknowledge is going to be an explosive offense and throw for tons of yards and score tons of touchdowns. And you're like, so do you want any running backs or receivers? And I'm like, no, I don't want
Not
any.
Really. It's crazy.
Not from the best offense in the league. No, I don't want those.
It's wild. That's just, again, when you need a concentrated offense in fantasy. And as good as this offense is, it's the furthest thing away from concentrated outside of, again, Travis Kelce. And that's why I just don't like Pacheco where he's going right now. I have him looking solid, 750 yards, 5-ish touchdowns. I could probably bump those touchdowns up to even 8 touchdowns. And I still don't really like his price tag, because you're having to take him ahead of or right around Cam Akers, who I think is going to be a true featured back. James Conner goes like 2 rounds after Isaiah Pacheco, and I think projects as a much safer bet for volume here. So I do like the player, and I think the team really did they saw what he could bring to the table in the playoffs. He played through like a broken rib and started like the opposite of Hilaire. So the team really lauds him and they respect him, and maybe he does get a slight uptick as a bonus here because he played so well for this team. But even still, I just think the other guys are such more involved as a pass catchers, whether it's McKinnon or Hilaire or both. And then you always have that risk of maybe Hilaire sneaks his way back into this backfield again. And to me, Pacheco's just a little bit overdrafted. Certainly given the names that go around him. So yeah, it really comes down to, I love Travis Kelce. You can take him with a top 5 pick. Of course you love Mahomes, but I personally go Josh Allen. So I don't even get a ton of Pat Mahomes there. And then Kadarius Toney, I do get a lot of in round 7, but he's starting to climb into early round 6 at times. And even that would be a little too rich for me. So I don't, you were chuckling about, I really don't end up with all that many Chiefs, despite thinking they'll be a top 5 offense in nearly every category you ask for passing wise. Yeah, it's just not a team that I'm getting a ton of given their prices right now.
Yeah, I hear you. A good assessment of the Chiefs, in my opinion. And when I see it on paper and then I actually talk about guys I'm targeting and I'm interested in, it's crazy that I don't want them more other than Kelce. Right. I mean, obviously, we like Allen more than Mahomes. If I get Mahomes, I'm not complaining. I mean, he's
of course not. No, I'm happy to have Mahomes, but
yes. Sure, I'm happy to welcome him to the team. Absolutely.
Yes, of course. And if you're catching the show with us too, that thumbs up button does help us continue to grow, get out to more people. It looks like we got at least somebody commenting in there. I didn't even see who we got here with us today. Maybe he's a Charlie Menelakis for the London. No, Tunes, of course. Had to guess. I should have guessed Tunes. The first overall pick there. But no, thank you again so much for those of you that are live with us or catching the replay. We hope you enjoy the show, and we will continue plowing forward now.
All right, we're going to get into the Chargers now. Another very fun AFC West team. Like you said at the jump, maybe a little underwhelming last year, just given the expectations we had. I feel like you might have had Herbert. Did you have Herbert QB1 or QB2 at the beginning of last year?
I had QB2 behind Josh Allen, but yeah, he was pretty consensus QB2. It was like him and Mahomes. A lot of people were debating between, and obviously Mahomes was the right pick there, and I was on the wrong side of this one. I just thought I'd get the Tyreek Hill downgrade. But yeah, now he's fallen to like QB6 or so, and I think this offense is.
We grabbed him at QB6 in one of our best balls, and I loved it.
Yes.
Loved it.
Yeah, I really like the Chargers.
We both kind of agree that there's a drop after him, right?
Yeah, in terms of like who could be that true cheat code, it was him in a tier. It was him, Burrow, and then I had like a next tier and a half with Trevor Lawrence, who I do really like. We talked about him on the AFC South show last week, but there is a drop between him and Herbert, in my opinion. Not a full.
Yeah, you would never draft Lawrence over either of those guys, but I understand why he's there.
Yes.
All right, let's get into the Chargers under new management. Talk to me about what you're looking for from these guys this year.
Yeah, Kellen Moore now man in the offense, which I think is going to have a really big impact. I hate Joe Lombardi. Thought he was a moron. One of the best arms we've seen ever in the league, and he just reined it in with little pop gun attack. It was stupid, complete mismanagement of his talent, and I do not think that will be the case with Kellen Moore. So just in terms of raw plays, before we talk about what these plays are going to look like, I do have this team running well above league average. You can look at the team level down here, and that is consistent with Staley. He likes to be aggressive. He likes to run a ton of plays. Ever since Herbert Scott here, they have been significantly above league average the past 3 seasons. Staley and him arrived together. So you can see 75, 71, and 84 plays above league average in the 3 seasons with Justin Herbert. Clearly a very pass happy team there too, 64%, 62%, and 57% pass rate in that span. And then you have Kellen Moore come in who pushes the pace even further. So I expect potentially even more plays, certainly more aggressive plays. All the talk so far in these early camp has been just Herbert unleashing the deep ball more early and often, especially on those like first down plays where they catch the defense off guard. They've really been lighting it up. And I get it. It's OTAs, it's shorts. We can't just go nuts here. But the fact that it's already been noticeably felt by beat writers, by the players themselves coming out and saying, we're going to be throwing this thing deep. It's so clear this year. Keenan Allen saying, I might get the highest yards per reception of my career the way he's using me right now. So I really, really like what he's going to bring to the table. Kellen Moore, just from a sheer volume standpoint, you can see lots of plays running. He's also, so that was the Chargers history, but you can look at Kellen Moore as well. Definitely a little more balanced, but also consistently above league average of 99, 51, 55, 64 plays. In his first 3 seasons, that's when he really had the keys to this offense and was similarly around that 60% pass rate. Last year, McCarthy did take back over, not officially, but apparently, you hear some of the comments. Sounds like he really reined in Kellen Moore, saying that he fired him because he was trying to light up the scoreboard too much, throwing it too much. I want to run the ball so I can rest my defense. I don't want to be the number 1 offense in the league, unlike Kellen Moore. So I know we've said that quote many times on the show, and I get it. I guess if that's how you want to play your game, that's why you want to play your game. But I think the Chargers got to steal.
I do not get it. I'm not going to say if that's how you want to play your game. You want to play your game. If someone's an offensive coordinator and that's like the best offense in the league, generally speaking, you're happy with those results. I'm trying to remember ever hearing something so stupid in my life. He's too effective at his job.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
I'm not even going to give him the okay if that's what you want to do. There's no excuse for it. It's crazy.
No, I'm pretty much with you there too. I do understand the idea that if you're throwing it and scoring way too fast, your defense doesn't get a rest. I get that. But still, if the fact that Kellen Moore, he had only 3 seasons with Dak, and really only 2 of those years was he allowed to operate the offense he wanted to. First in the league in yards, second in the league in points. First in the league in yards, first in the league in points. In 2019 and 2021, those are the 2 seasons that he had Dak healthy. And the first 5 games of 2020 when Dak was healthy, he was averaging over 30 fantasy points a game. He would have been putting up the most points ever by a quarterback, by any fantasy player, going for 32 points a game. I don't know if you remember that crazy stretch in 2020 where Dak, he had 44, 46, 34 points, and he had 15 in the first half against the Giants and got hurt. So it was wild.
I remember I owned him, and
I
was riding like really high for a while. And
yes.
That was devastating for me when he got injured. And I'm sure for him too.
A little less for him, a little more for you, but I guess you both had a little bit of pain invested in Dak. But you saw firsthand then how when this offense is clicking, that this can be one of the craziest offenses in the league. And I don't think it's a stretch to say at all that Herbert is a significant 2 steps ahead of Dak in terms of just raw talent. The guy is ridiculous. So I would not be shocked at all. Maybe you call me the man of hyperbole, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Justin Herbert pushes for the passing record this year. He has an extra game ahead of Peyton Manning, who threw for over 5,400 yards. And I have, as you can see, I'll go back to the projections and kind of scroll up. You can see I've raved about how this offense will be faster, take more deep shots and really play into Justin Herbert's strength. So I have that translating right around 5,400 yards, right aligned with that record. I don't have quite the amount of touchdowns. I think Manning threw for like 55 touchdowns that year. But honestly, I mean, it really is within that realm of possibility, given the faster pace, the better play calling, and the fact that they add Quentin Johnson, one of my favorite receivers of this class, to now have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Quentin Johnson. That's a top 3 trio in the entire league that could even push for number 1. So I love the weapons. I love the play calling. I love the player in Justin Herbert. As you said, going at quarterback 6 right now in round 5, you get him a few rounds after those other Josh Allen's, Jalen Hurts's, and he should go after those guys. But by 2 rounds or so, I think he could absolutely threaten to be a cheat code style quarterback that you can have 5 other talent picks ahead of him. So I think he's going to be great. I also did bump up his rushing touchdowns
That's
He
not
had
nothing.
5 a couple years ago, and when he was used with Shane Steichen, and then they really reined him in as a runner, and they probably won't run him much. But if you look at his combine measurables, Scott Barrett pointed this out to me. His numbers were better than Josh Allen. So like if they ever actually wanted to use him as a Konami guy, they really could. They probably will never, and they shouldn't. When you have an arm like that, use the
Yeah, they
arm.
should.
But he can. Dak had multiple 6 touchdown plus seasons in a row under Kellen Moore. They love calling that kind of read option when they get in tight. So even if he just bumps it up from it was 0 last year to 5, that's a significant jump here for him. So I put in a little bit of that factor as well. So clearly similar to Pat Mahomes, I think this one's going to be a very, very juicy pie, but I do think this one's going to have some weapons that are much clearer to have it distributed to, and guys that you really want. None more so than Austin Eckler, who I again project for some monster totals. The guy scored 38 touchdowns across his last 2 seasons. That is wild scoring pace there. And I have him for once again going for 17. Step backwards, 17 touchdowns. It's fucking crazy how good this guy is. They have talked a lot about how the running game is certainly something that they're trying to streamline, just make simpler, and how they just really didn't. The linemen are really talking about that, how they like Kellen Moore. You look at his Cowboys games. Yes, they definitely chucked it deep and had these high-flying attacks, but they had some great running games throughout that too. Yes, Pollard and Prime Zeke were good players to ride, but Austin Eckler can certainly get it done both as a receiver and a runner too. So I do expect a little more stability, higher yards per pop for Austin Eckler than he's had in the past, just given a more consistent, steady scheme that everybody's raving about. I just know I mentioned the line. Best line that he's going to ever play behind. Rashawn Slater, looking like the next studded left tackle, did get hurt towards bicep at week 3 last year. And so they had to kind of mix around pieces, and it just kind of faltered from there. But if you have him there, you can kick Zion Johnson, a first-round guard, back into his more natural spot, and you've got yourself maybe a top 6 line in the league. We haven't seen that ever for Justin Herbert and for Austin Eckler. So another monster season coming for him. 1,000 on the ground, 650 through the air on 85 catches, about 17 to 20 combined touchdowns. Well worth the first-round pick that you're going to have to spend on him. He's falling right now to 8 or 9 or so in underdog, and I love it. I know it's a receiver-heavy platform, but yeah, I get him every time he's there at 9. I absolutely love it. It is low.
I can't believe he's dropping that low.
Exactly. And I keep in mind, too, if this offense does take another step forward, as I think, the fact that he scored 38 touchdowns in back-to-back years, and this offense could be even better as a whole, might mean like 20 to 25 touchdowns is a real possibility. So the fact that 17 touchdowns is honestly like his floor. It's nuts to me. I absolutely love Austin Eckler. They made no moves really behind him. They've talked about Josh Kelly being a bit more active as a more of a thumping type of body, but he is such a significant step, like 10 steps behind Austin Eckler as a talent that in any type of close game, I don't think they're going to Josh Kelly at all. And maybe he vultures. I probably should bump him up for a few more touchdowns because I do think he's going to kind of become a little bit of a vulture, and that's why I had Eckler step back a bit. So maybe I give Josh Kelly like 3 touchdowns and call it a day.
Unless Eckler's getting hurt, which, I mean, there's always substantial risk at this position. We talked about this when we talked – I think when we talked running backs, this is, you have a season like that, like he had 2 years ago, and you say like, oh, there's got to be some regression. When it happens again, then you have to say, I mean, for me at least, then it's like, all right, well, now you got to prove to me why it's not going to happen a third time. Like he's a touchdown machine. Like I don't think he's going to get too many vultured.
No, exactly. I don't think so. He's so damn good, right? Exactly. Why take him out? It's an automatic 6 every time you go to him.
Too effective.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So 17 touchdowns honestly feels like a floor to me. There is some value to Josh Kelly in the sense that, he might be a handcuff with benefits, but certainly the handcuff aspect of it. Eckler didn't miss any time last year, so it didn't matter. But we did see 2 years ago when Eckler missed 1 game, Justin Jackson had 30 fantasy points, was the running back 1. So just a matter of being that good of an offense that whoever has to step up and get the volume is going to be a pretty good play regardless. So there is some late round stab appeal to Josh Kelly, but we still don't even know. Is he going to be that compliment? Is it going to be Isaiah Spiller, the rookie they drafted last year, who really, really underwhelmed and disappointed a lot of people? We'll see. But really, you only care about Austin Eckler out of the backfield. At receiver, much different story. 3 guys that you really have to know. So as you can see, target-wise, I distributed 16% to Austin Eckler. That'd be a slight step back. He usually sees at 19 to 20, but I did want to account for the addition of Quentin Johnston, an absolute monster who I think is going to fit this offense perfectly. Leading the way is Keenan Allen. I know it's his age, 35 season at this point, so he's getting up there, and he's close to that cliff. But even last year, when he was in the 10 games he played, he was the wide receiver 8 in terms of fantasy points per game. He was a top 24 wide receiver, a whopping 86% of the time. He had only one quote-unquote dud, and he still put up 10 points in that dud game. So Keenan Allen was as good as ever. He just missed a little more time than we had seen in the prior years. But already he's the star of early camp. They're talking about how Keenan Allen's being used in a more of a deep ball role than he's ever been used for the last 7 years. And it's not like he can't do it. He's done that before. I kind of want to pull up real quick Keenan Allen, just kind of show you. Back in the day, he did have a quite a bit higher yards per reception here. So Keenan Allen, a couple of crazy things I just wanted to point out is one, when he plays, he's always going to be targeted. Above 23% target share in all of the last seven seasons, including all of those above 25% or higher, other than last year. But he has had some vertical elements to his game: 13.6, 12.21. This is when he was a bit more of an Air Coryell offense under the Turners, and they were actually letting him get deep. That's more resembling what this scheme is. So I think a return to this type of 1,300-ish yards is very possible if he is streaking deep down the field. It's an older player, but after statting them out, I bumped him up a little bit in my rankings ahead of Debo, ahead of some other guys who I do love as well. But as like a round 3 receiver, he becomes somebody that I hadn't been getting a lot of to somebody I am looking to continue to go after regularly. I know Quentin Johnston, a big mouth to come in here, this rookie I keep alluding to. I think that's going to nibble more so at Mike Williams. But as you can see, 17 and 16% share for those guys, you're still in such a high volume attack, getting over 110 targets for those guys as well. So I do think there's plenty of room for all 3 of those guys, plus Austin Eckler. If the pie is as big as I expect, we're talking 3 potential 1,000-yard receivers, all of them having 6 or more touchdowns here. I give a slight edge to Mike Williams just being here longer. He also has reportedly been a dominant force in early camp. Quentin Johnston, though, all the talk has also been how impressive he is getting deep down the field, but also that he's bringing this new run after the catch. He's a big body guy, but he is very, very shifty after the catch as well. So that's kind of an element that the offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, and then head coach Brandon Staley saying, we didn't have that element last year. He's bringing something new. So I think all of them will be heavily involved. Obviously, the biggest hits then go to Josh Palmer, who I think is going to be useless at this point. And Gerald Everett, who, he's still okay. We saw Dalton Schultz get really good usage with Kellen Moore, but he also didn't have 3 receivers of this level of capability. So I think this will be a pretty evenly distributed, huge pie, pretty evenly distributed. All these guys have a lot of upside in it. I don't get a ton of Mike Williams just because, as you can see, I have very similar stats, 1,120 and 8 for him on 70 catches versus 72, almost 1,106 for Quentin Johnston. Johnson just goes about 5 rounds later, and I think they're going to be this close in production that where Mike Williams goes, I'd rather have Joe Mixon. I'd rather have, sometimes Najee Harris is even falling into that range. And I like Mike Williams, definitely a good best ball style guy because, 30 points one week, 0 the next. That doesn't kill you in best ball like it does in regular fantasy. So I do like him in some of these early best ball drafts, but I still think there's guys going around him that I prefer. So to me, Keenan Allen will be nice and steady, 23% or so target share. The other guys might nibble at each other a little bit, but they're both going to be great picks. I just like Quentin Johnston, who goes a little bit cheaper.
Agree. I owned
Sweet.
Mike Williams. I owned Mike Williams last year, and I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't a fun experience. It was like, he blows up every now and then. And when he does, especially when it happens early in the year, you feel really smart and it's just really fun pulling for him. But man, there was like 1 catch, 4-yard games and nothing especially when you need him. I feel like there was a game last year where I just needed him to be okay and I would have won. And it was like a Monday night game and he was just awful.
Yep. I remember that because we did the show ahead of time. You're like, I just need like 8 from Mike Williams. I think he got like 0. That's the risk of him, Yeah,
and it just wasn't fun. I agree with you though. He's much better suited as best ball.
Yes, and this offense is really going to suit his skills too. That he is a big body that can get down the field
Yeah, oh, definitely.
early and often.
Definitely.
So maybe he finds a little more consistency. But I agree, especially with Quentin Johnston added here too. I think it's going to be a lot of mouths, and he might be the least consistent of them. So he, at his price at least, is not a guy I'm often getting. I think Tunes brings up a really good point here. I just checking the questions and comments, and great to see Charlie Mendelakis has exact joined. But Tunes saying, how many screen yards for Eckler with all this deep ball talk? And I think it's a really good point. It's part of what makes that so dangerous is how much space that's going to be underneath for Austin Eckler if these receivers are playing to the levels I think they are. All the better for him. And I also think, but you also see, so Austin Eckler, as much damage as he did last year, he had negative 100 air yards on the year because they just swing passes behind the line of scrimmage. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Kellen Moore. We saw some great wheel routes out of Tony Pollard, him lining up in the slot, making some just great moves. So I could even see Eckler being used more creatively and also not just screen yards, but going deep to Tunes. So, I mean, I'm just so excited for this offense as a whole, for Kellen Moore's arrival and what that could mean in terms of unlocking the true ceiling of Justin Herbert, which, as just to summarize for anybody coming in late here, I think Justin Herbert could actually break the passing record this year in terms of yards and maybe even touchdowns if he just really, really blew up. Like Dak Prescott was going to break the record for touchdowns potentially when he was healthy in 2020 and then got hurt in this Kellen Moore attack. And I think this is a better quarterback with better weapons. I just can't wait for this. I am so excited. The more I say this out, Truth, the more I'm like, I wish I had been drafting more Justin Herbert. I have him obviously in the draft we did, and I've done him a few other times, but I'm going to get a lot more shares the more and more I project this offense out.
Cool. I'm looking forward to watching this team. This is definitely,
Yes.
This is definitely must-see football, I would say. You want to do the Raiders or the Broncos next?
Let's go to the Raiders. Let's hit these Raiders.
Okay. Raiders. This is not, this is like my big call from last year. As like I said, they would be better than the Broncos last year. And boy, was I right. Because, man, the Broncos were terrible. Where do you see the Raiders this year? Do you see them kind of moving parallel to where they were last year? Do you see any significant big change bringing in Jimmy G instead of Derek Carr?
No, Jimmy G is more of a winner, so maybe they pull out a game or two that they wouldn't have otherwise. But in terms of just overall offensive production, just overall team, I don't think they're going to be much better. In fact, the production could go a little step backwards because Jimmy G is much more conservative and takes care of the ball, and the big shots aren't going to be there nearly at the level of, and Derek Carr wasn't good, but he at least tried to throw the deep ball quite often. So I don't think they're going to be a significant jump ahead. And I do think Sean Payton coming to the Broncos does make them a lot more interesting. So I think we'll talk about where we see everybody finishing at the end, but I don't like the Raiders very much in terms of overall, unless Jimmy G really is just that good of a winner. I guess we'll find out soon enough. In terms of the overall offense, though, they were at 585 pass attempts last year, a little under 420 rush attempts. I think something similar with a decent bump in rush attempts and a little bit of a drop in pass attempts just to account for Jimmy G. He is more conservative. He likes to lean on the run game. You've seen it with the 49ers. If Josh McDaniels is going to use that roadmap at all, then I do expect this to be a somewhat conservative attack. Now, we did see Josh McDaniels and Jimmy G together for just 2 games over with the New England Patriots, but they had they did let him throw it decently enough. He was on pace for over 500 pass attempts in those 2 games. He threw 3 touchdowns in the second game, over 280 yards in the first game. So they had some pass success, but this also was in 2016. So a decent amount of time ago as well. But he was on pace for 4,200 yards, 34 touchdowns. And to me, that would be the ceiling here, 4,200 yards and 34 touchdowns on 502 pass attempts. That was the pace he was on in his starts with McDaniels before. So I have him right around there, a little step back, 4,125. Maybe they do air it out a little bit more and he can approach that 30 touchdown and the 42 to 4,500 yard range. He certainly has okay enough weapons in terms of where you have Davante Adams. What else do you really need? Josh Jacobs looking good as a receiver too. But it's certainly not someone I'm looking to go out and draft right now. Jimmy G really has never been as good as he is real life wise in terms of getting the wins and keeping you competitive every single week. He just never really moves the needle fantasy wise So I'm not targeting him at all, but that doesn't mean there's no people of no interest, because it is some solid options in this offense, and it is the opposite of the Chiefs in that it's very, very concentrated on two people, really, is all that matter here. As you can see, Davante Adams, a whopping 28% target share, and that would actually be a step back from what he's seen the last 6 years. I only put him a little bit of a slight step back because they did go out and sign Jacoby Myers to a really big contract. We know he has some good experience with Josh McDaniels as well from their New England days. So I do expect him to nibble in just a little bit more, because you look at last year, they had Mac Hollins was second on the team with a 15% target share. There was really nobody else to throw to. So I think Myers at least presents somewhat of a interesting option there to nibble a little bit of Adams' cheese. But again, not much nibbling going to happen here. So as you can see there, 28% share for Adams, 18% for Myers, 12% going to Renfro, who obviously a huge disappointment last year. I'm so pissed. Oh, I really thought he was going to dominate as that next McDaniel slot. We did, yeah. We did not have a good year at receiver last year, to put it mildly. So we're going to be much more on our game this year, for sure. But then you also have, I have Josh Jacobs. One of the big steps for him was getting that heavier receiving work in addition to the rushing work. We had seen him kind of be a committee back throughout his career, and then under Josh McDaniels, really, really opened up his usage last year. He had seen decent targets through his career, Josh Jacobs, but it was just that rushing work becoming 100%, 80% of the work. I don't think that's likely. They've already talked about how they're going to get Zamir White a little more involved. But given that Josh Jacobs is on that franchise tag, I could definitely see this being a decent, just another like 350 plus touch season with the potential to again approach over 400 touches like he had last year. He was first in opportunities, second in attempts, first in the league in rush yards, the running back 3 in fantasy last year. Just an absolute monster of a season. But I did want to give that cautionary tale. John Daigle, one of my favorite accounts out there at not Jay Daigle. 5 running backs have registered 390 plus touches in a single season over the last 10 years. This is their usage in the next year. McCaffrey, 76 touches across 3 games. Henry, 237 touches, 8 games. DeMarco Murray, 237, 15 games. And then Le'Veon Bell held out. So that had only happened 5 other times, and all of those guys either got hurt early on or took a big step back. So the history's not on Josh Jacobs' side after this monster usage year, but he is still young. A lot of those guys, not Christian McCaffrey, but the rest of that list were entering some of the later stages of their careers. So it's a red flag. It's something to be aware of, especially on the injury front, and that could make Zamir White an interesting last-round stab. But as it stands right now, you can see I have 67% of the rush work going to Josh Jacobs with 315 carries, 1,354 yards, 11 touchdowns on 4.3 a pop. And then also, again, seeing right around 65 targets like you saw last year. I got him going for 68, 51 catches and holding in his first receiving touchdown of the year, 350 or of the his career rather, and 357 yards. So solid, right around 360 touches, right around 1,600 yards total, and right around 12 to 15 touches. I love Josh Jacobs round 3. I think it's a great price. You just got to, again, be aware, though, of the curse of 390 plus touches. Other than that, as said before, yes, I see Jacoby Myers getting some good usage with 102 targets, 71 catches, but he's never been a big red zone guy. He's small, he's shifty, he's high percentage, he'll move the chains, but you're going to get 781 4 touchdowns. I don't think that's anything overly useful in fantasy. It's Davante Adams and then not much else. Whopping 158 targets. That would be, again, his low for his last 7 years, and still, an absolute monster on them. He hasn't had lower than 10 touchdowns in any of his last seasons when he's played at least 15 or more games. He's had 10 plus touchdowns, more often than not 13 or more touchdowns as well. He's a monster. There's really not else you have to say about him. 1,378 yards, 10 touchdowns, over 100 catches. Ho-hum, a great first-round fantasy receiver. I see him often, for whatever reason, falling to mid-round 2 sometimes in these underdog drafts where receivers are heavily targeted. He's going behind oftentimes. Let's say I've seen CeeDee Lamb frequently going above him. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, not more than Davante Adams. I love Garrett Wilson, but we're betting on Garrett Wilson becoming Davante Adams. Why not just draft Davante Adams himself? So I have another Davante Adams monster year. The rookie tight end I don't have doing much. It's a hard position to learn, but I mean it is a role that McDaniels will craft if this kid is up for it. So that's a guy I could see getting bumped up a little bit if the early training camp reports are good. But it's Davante Adams, it's Josh Jacobs. It's not a whole lot more. Yeah. What do you think about Adams versus some of those younger guys?
I love Adams.
Yeah.
Yes. I love Adams.
Okay.
And I would. I heard you. I know you said Wilson. I know you said who was the
CeeDee Lamb, St. Brown.
I like him more than all those guys. I like St. Brown better than those other two, but I like Adams more than those guys. And it's not particularly close for me. I actually think your numbers on Adams are a little bit low for what I would say, which is ridiculous.
It's a monster year.
Pretty damn. Yeah, it is. I think the touchdowns might be a little low.
Well, let's look. I mean, this is his last few seasons. 33% target share last year, 100 catches, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, 123, 1,511, 115, 1,300.
I mean, you're giving him his least number of touchdowns in 4 years. I didn't even know those numbers. Just 10 seemed low to me.
Yeah, and then he was hurt this other one, but then 13, 10, and 13 touchdowns the other years prior to that. So
you're really lowballing him on the touchdowns.
I might be. I guess part of that is maybe the Jimmy G effect, just because I do expect a little bit more conservative, a few less of those deep bomb moonshots that we used to see from Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr at least would let him rope it. I don't think we're going to get those like.
What a great goal line threat he is.
Oh man, that back shoulder is like it's impossible to defend. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I probably should bump up the touchdowns a little bit. I just worry that a few of these touchdowns these last couple of years have been Adams getting like that Hail Mary ball from either Rodgers or last year, especially Carr, throwing in like triple coverage and him leaping up and making a crazy play. I just don't know if Jimmy G will give him those type of opportunities too. But we'll see.
Jimmy G has proven that he will throw into triple coverage.
Has he?
Yeah, he gets picked off all the time when he does it.
in big games, yes. I'll bump up his TDs. I'll give him right in line with he's at 11%.
I'm not trying to peer pressure you. I just think that yeah. Well, you asked how I felt about him compared to those young guys, and I kind of went on a tangent there. But I love Adams. I mean, he's just one of these guys, kind of like what I was saying with Eckler, except more so. It's like once you see somebody and Kelsey, once you see somebody do something enough times, like, it's like, and I was like, oh, the Jets are going to have to prove it to me. The Jaguars are going to have to prove it to me before I'm going to believe in them. The Giants are going to have to prove it to me before I believe in them. Well, this fucking guy has proven it to me a shit ton of times. And so, I'll take it to the bank.
I love him. I do. I'm with you. I think the 12 touchdowns, I just bumped him up to. That seems very reasonable. I can concede to you there, Truth. Why not? He's so damn good.
All right. You want to wrap up the division?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Okay. Absolutely.
Let's go to the Broncos.
I know it might be the last team we're doing. Dude, do you mind removing the banner after we talk? Or have you been doing that and I just have
No, I haven't been. Every time I go to change, every time I change it to the next team, I'm like, shit, I left the banner up the whole time. So
perfect.
I'm on here right now. I'm going to give it about a 5 count, and then I'm getting rid of this banner, as was the plan all episode, which I've not done at all. So here we go.
My trusty co-host. I appreciate it.
Obviously, the biggest change for the Broncos, right? It's like I had one job and I didn't do it. Big change for the Broncos is not on the field. It is the coach, of course. They were run ineptly last year, would be a kind way to put it. But now that guy is – where is he now? We were just talking shit about him. Oh, the Jets, right?
Yeah, Nathaniel Hackett. He's back to the Jets.
Right. That was one of my big arguments against Rodgers. It's like, okay, so now he's – anyway. That's a whole different rant for a whole different day. In fact, if you want to hear that rant, go listen to the AFC East episode because I definitely ranted about it. All right. Sell me on the Broncos if you can.
I'll do my best, and it is buying the coach narrative 100%. Can Sean Payton save Russ Wilson and the Broncos? And if anybody can, it would be Sean Payton. This guy is among the most brilliant offensive minds this game has seen on that level with Andy Reid as just a brilliant schemer, brilliant play caller. So if somebody can save this guy, it would be him. 14 years with the Saints for Sean Payton. He was top 12 in yards and touchdowns in all but 1 year with those Saints. And even more impressive in my opinion, in 9 of those 14 years, so 65% of them, top 5 in the league in yards and touchdowns. Now I get it. Drew Brees was prolific. This was like the ultimate marriage of talented quarterback, of a play caller that knew how to use him. But Brees was with the Chargers for a few years, did nothing of the sort. So I really do think the scheme is just phenomenal. And you look at the end of the career, it wasn't just this all aired out prolific passing game. When Drew Brees was on his back 9, they only ranked 19th, 23rd, 13th, 25th, and 30th in passes. So it wasn't just always a matter of throwing the ball like crazy. And that's why we're at this team level. You can probably, a lot of people are probably like, what? That's, 560 pass attempts for Sean Payton. That's pathetic. That does not seem right. Well, actually, in the last 5 years as a coach, we just gave you that low number of pass attempts, and the run pass ratio, 50-50 in 2021, 51-49, 2020, 59-41, 2019, and then 52-48 in 2018. So in his last 4 seasons, at least all but one of those have been like almost a perfect 50-50 split. So I do expect that. I think he's going to lean on his young running back in Javonte Williams once he gets healthy, and lean on Samaje Perine until then. So I don't expect this to be a aerial bonanza, but I do expect it to be efficient and very, very high-powered if Russ Wilson is actually capable of running that, which is a huge if. I really liked Russell Wilson until what I saw last year. I don't know if that was just one horrendous play caller situation and Russ can bounce back. I haven't bought into that narrative in terms of my draft style too much. I do draft a good amount of Javonte Williams and Greg Dulcich. We'll talk about both those guys in a second. I have not been landing a ton of Russell Wilson, sometimes Cortland Sutton in round 9, not Jerry Jeudy at his price tag, but we'll talk about all those guys in a bit. In terms of what I expect from Russell Wilson, though, it's kind of like the late career Drew Brees, right around 4,200 to 4,500 yards, right around 25 to 30 passing touchdowns if he can bounce back. There is also the ceiling. So maybe I should buy a little more Russ, but I don't know. I don't think I'm going to regret not having it, but there is the ceiling. We do just get a complete renaissance from the guy that Sean Payton, just like he did to Drew Brees, who threw for 40 plus touchdowns in over half of his seasons. Maybe we do get 15 touchdowns added onto this, and then everybody here is just a complete and utter cheat code at their price tags. Clearly, that's not what I expect. I expect more of the last 5 years or so of the Drew Brees era, of the Saints era, where it was a much more balanced attack with some nice, precise, high, just great deep ball shots that are timed up the right way. If Russ can still uncork like he used to be able to with the Seahawks, then this offense is going to take a very nice step forward under Sean Payton. How will that all get distributed? That 4,200 yards and 30 touchdowns. So as you can see, I have Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, neck and neck in terms of target share, going back and forth. The early rumblings are Cortland Sutton's playing more of the Michael Thomas, X big slot, move him around type of role. And Cortland Sutton also going 4 rounds after Jerry Jeudy, who goes rounds, close to Keenan Allen, who I just obviously raved about and gushed about. So to me, I have no Jerry Jeudy right now at his price tag. Give me Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel, even Christian Watson, who goes a little bit later than guys that I like more. Here, I think him and Sutton are going to be very, very similar statistics-wise. 76 catches, 973, and 6 for Jeudy versus 71, 966, and 7 for Cortland Sutton. I'll take the guy that's going 4+ rounds cheaper, if anybody, in this passing attack, which I'm not 100% sold. I need as much as I want to buy into a Sean Payton attack. I love the rookie Marvin Mims. If you want a big rant on him, I talked about him a lot with Dane on our Dynasty show. I drafted Marvin Mims in Dynasty, ultimately moved him with Trey Lance to get Daniel Jones. But a lot of good talk about Marvin Mims and how he was one of the second best receiving prospects to come out in the last 10 years, according to a lot of the metrics that Scott Barrett likes. And there's a lot to like about this kid. He's the first player drafted by the Sean Payton era who sought him out, who uses deep ball guys great. That's the risk with Jeudy and Sutton, in my opinion, is Mims is the one that got handpicked by Sean Payton and has the talent. He's the all-time leading receiver in high school of our nation. I know it's high school, but still, the guy has shown at every level the ability to dominate. So he could just walk right in and nibble at one, if not both of their cheeses. So that's why I'm not all that into either of them, but especially not Jeudy at a early round 4 price tag. Beyond them, 20 and 21% target share for them, which again, I could see being closer to 16, 17, and Marvin Mims getting right into that 15 range. I predicted this very similar, though, to the later stage Brandon Cooks and Mike Thomas. That's kind of how I envision these guys, with a little bit less of a pie. Those guys, produced 5,200 yards with Drew Brees. So a smaller pie, but a similar distribution of the slices there. The big thing with Sean Payton, and yes, Alvin Kamara dictates a lot of that, but even before Kamara got there, whether it was Darren Sproles, whether it was Reggie Bush, even when he had neither of those guys, and it was like Tim Hightower and Mark Ingram, his running back shares, I'll just read you these target shares to the running back position across his last, this is nuts. So from 2021 down, 28.3% running back target share, 28.1, 27.5, 28.2, 33.8, 24.5, 23.5, 25.6, and 31.7% of the throws going to the running back. So the low there was 23.5, and that was top 5 still for running back target shares. It's a big part of his offense. It always has been. Certainly helps when he has a Kamara, Sproles, or Reggie Bush. But like I said, even in years when he didn't have them, still was getting to that 24% or so target range. So I think that's great news for Javonte Williams once he is healthy. He's coming off that knee tear, but it was at the beginning of the year. And until he's back, I think Samaje Perine is going to be an absolute bull. Remember, when he was filling in for Joe Mixon last year, he had three starts, and 2 of them he was in the top 7 fantasy running backs for those games. So the guy can definitely shoulder volume with the best of them. A big, sturdy guy. They cited that out as why we went out and made sure to get Samaje Perine a great insurance policy as we get Javonte Williams healthy, who is looking like he's well ahead of schedule. He strikes me as one of those types of guys that's just kind of made of the freakish stuff, like not Adrian Peterson level freak, but you remember where he tears ACL, comes back and leads the league in rushing the next year. Like there's just some of these kind of running backs that are just built like beasts. And it sounds like he's just powering through his rehab and looks no worse for the wear right now. He can definitely catch. He had 11 targets in his first game last year, Javonte Williams. So he's a bigger, if he gets used even close to what Alvin Kamara is, Javonte Williams is going to be a monstrous steal, even if it's only for half the season, because he starts on the PUP or whatever it might be. But here I'm projecting him to maybe miss 1, maybe 2 games. That's a big bump up for Samaje Perine for a while. He might be the starter. And even when Williams is in, we know it's usually a 2-back offense, the Ingram-Kamara type of molds. But there was a season where Ingram and Kamara were both top 7 running backs. That's how good. This is a gold mine offense for running backs. So I do like the backs quite a bit. Certainly Javonte Williams, but especially if he's going to miss some time, I do think Samaje Perine can shoulder that quite well. The only other guy to talk about would be Greg Dulcich. But again, I want to make sure to highlight just how good this offense is for the backs. But I also love Greg Dulcich. He's been cited already by Sean Payton. I talked about this on our tight end show, top 15 tight ends, that he's kind of in line for the Joker role, the move around player in the mold of Jimmy Graham, Jeremy Shockey. And he also mentioned Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, and Kamara as the guys that just like to move all over the place. He said Greg Dulcich is flashing the ability, the speed to be that kind of mismatch nightmare. And he says he's getting a really good vision for how he wants to use and deploy Greg Dulcich. I love that. I love it. If Sean Payton has a vision for you, I want you on my fantasy team. And I certainly want you on my team if you're going in rounds 12, 13, 14, a guy that was top 7 in tight end air yards despite missing the first 6 games of the year. He can get deep. He can go down the seam. He's one of the only guys that seem to have a good rapport with Russell Wilson all last year. So I'm a big fan of Greg Dulcich. I think he is an absolute steal at the tight end position. I love going Dalton Schultz round 12, Greg Dulcich round 13, 688 yards, 7 touchdowns, and maybe 55 plus catches. And if he does play that real true Joker role, this could get bumped up to 75 catches. And then you're talking about an absolute cheat code at the position. So I really like Dulcich just because he has a play caller that definitely knows how to use his talent, mold it the right way. And I'm not just sitting here being like, oh, Jimmy Graham, we got Sean Payton, always the beast. There was a year or 2, just 3 seasons ago, that the tight ends saw 11% target share, the lowest in the league. That's what I like about Payton. He figures out what he has and he molds around it. He always will have a good pass catching running back, but then he plays to his scheme. And if the tight end doesn't deserve more than 11% targets, he'll funnel those to the running backs. Kamara saw 33% of the targets that season. So he really does mold to his players. But I do think Dulcich is a guy that he singled him out and said, this is a guy I'm really excited to mold around. Definitely intrigues me. So all those Broncos, I know it was an ugly team last year, Truth. Did I sell you on any of them? Which points rung a bell with you, if any?
The only guy, all right. I'm always going to have some interest in Javonte Williams just because of the talent. I mean, he's fun to watch. I'm a fan. But really, other than him, the only person I'm even remotely interested in is a late stab at Dulcich.
Okay.
I mean, I see the value there. I'm so out on Russell Wilson that I cannot even express it, and as a result, I don't know. I feel like that receiving core is, sure, they're talented, but it's kind of like meh. None of them move the needle for me. The guys that you were naming that are going around, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, I agree with you that Sutton is the guy to get it between him and Jeudy, just based on the price. I think they'll be pretty similar as well. But the guys that you were listing around Jeudy in the draft, tell me some of those guys again that were going
like
around.
honestly similar to Keenan Allen. We already talked about.
That's not a comparison. That's ridiculous.
No, not even close, right? And every single draft, somebody takes him. People do love him. I like Jeudy. I don't though. I'm not in love with him at all. Not nearly as much as some other people are out there.
No,
and the thing with Russell Wilson,
I'm not in on many Broncos at all.
Yeah. If Russell Wilson does suck to start the year, Payton did say we brought Stidham in for a reason. We really like Jarrett Stidham. We think he has an untapped ceiling. So I wouldn't be shocked. It's not like Payton's married to Russell Wilson. Obviously, he got hired to fix this thing and turn it around. But if he is unfixable, if he just is that bad, which I think he will rebound and be the starter all year. But if Stidham ends up taking over, we saw him start one game last year for the Raiders, and he bombed the 49ers, the best defense in the league. He ended up putting up 4 touchdowns. Adams, I think, had his biggest game of the year with Stidham at quarterback. So it's probably not going to happen, but I do think that's kind of the boost the floor a little bit of the receiving products, that the fact that they have actually something potentially viable behind Russell Wilson that Sean Payton really singled out as a guy that he really desired as his backup. That buoys the floor just a little bit if Russell Wilson does completely blow. I don't think Payton will hesitate to rip him out as a starter and put in Stidham.
God, man, there's a lot of people with a lot invested in Wilson being successful. Like these people that gave him all this money. Like, man. Anyway, I agree. I think he's going to have a pretty long leash.
Yeah.
Wilson.
Yeah. Probably. I think he's going to be okay. Clearly, I'm not projecting him to like bomb second year in a row.
I think he'll be mediocre. I don't think he's going to be a disaster. I don't think he's going to return to his old form. I think he'll be like, all right.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
You want to go to the comments? We got a few.
Yeah, let's hit the mailbag. I see some legends in there.
Yeah, of course. We talked Toon. CH was my pick at first round, second pick, his rookie year. My ass still hurts. I won't touch him. I'm with you, Toon. With you completely. Charlie,
I can't blame you.
Charlie, here too. Who would I be to skip out on the KC LA Chargers show? Couple fire emojis. Thanks, Charlie. Charlie he's dedicated. He likes the lunch show.
Legend. He does.
Toon says, how many screen yards for Eckler with all the deep ball talk? You actually touched on that earlier, right?
Yeah, I pulled that one up. Just it mixed into that, 650 to 700-ish receiving yards. I think some great, well-designed screens, yes, but also think about some of those creative ways Pollard was used on those wheel routes, on the slot, going deep posts and things of that nature. Wouldn't be shocked at all for just even more creative usage too.
Toon says, have you heard about how Dak has like a $60 million cap hit next year? I know it's not now, but how do they handle this? Ugh, God.
That's tough. Is there any way to get out of it? Like, is it like
I don't pretend to know how they should handle it. I know it's bad.
Yeah. I'm never good with the cap stuff because to me, I'm always just like, it's fake money, whatever. Just he's going to get paid and somebody like whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's brutal. Dak's certainly not worth that level of cap hit. It's been pretty clear. So that could be rough.
All right. And last but not least, our guy Mitch. Been a while.
Mitch Chavez.
Go Chiefs. Had to especially be here being AFC West today. Have a great day. You too. You too, Mitch.
You too, Mitch. What a legend. The nicest man in the world. Great to see you. But yeah, fun division for sure. So awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for, again, coming here. That thumbs up on the way out would be so greatly appreciated if you enjoyed the content. If you're new around here, we gained 10 subs last week real quickly. Love to see that. So we'd love to have more and more of you jumping into the Wolfpack and joining here. And, of course, all these projections, all the content will be at rotostreetjournal.com. You can find my rankings and whatnot. Everything 99.9% of what we do is free on the site. It's there to help you out. The projections will be behind a paywall. One of the only things we do put behind a paywall. So if you want to support your boy, good, free, and easy way to do it. Those will be up in July. It's just our first round. We're going to be updating them, obviously, daily as we learn more in training camp, preseason, all that good stuff alongside the rankings as well. So check that all out. And of course, if you want to use these projections to help you out on Underdog, code RSJ gets you up to $100 match. You can also find the link in the description as well to make sure you can support your boys that way too. That'd be so greatly appreciated. But all you guys, thank you again so much for being here. We'll be back live again tomorrow. I kind of like this 1 o'clock time slot. Does that work for you, Truth? It gives me enough planning time ahead of time.
Tentatively, yes. I can do 1 o'clock tomorrow, I think.
Sweet. So we'll tentatively pencil it in. I'll schedule it early. You can follow us on Instagram, Roto Street Journal. We always post when, if there's any changes or anything of that nature, what time we are going live. So you can always follow us there as well. And of course, I'm at Roto Street Wolf. Sweet. And a wolf of fancy sheep, guys. Be that wolf. Later.